Good morning and thank you for coming into this extraordinary meeting of the Community Services Committee for the 29th of April. First of all, I'm going to tell you how we're going to run this morning. It's going to be a moving feast, I think, given the emails I've had from a couple of people, and we're going to get Claire Barton up fairly early to answer any questions regarding the resource consent issues. So I just wanted to cover that off first. I'll do the apologies, which is from Councillor McGurk, if there's somebody who would like to move that. Thank you, Councillor Laurie. Seconded Councillor Courtney. I'll put that. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. So the order of business, we've got Councillor Fulton. Are you online, Councillor Fulton?
Yes, I'm here.
Awesome. Very good to have you, thank you. And you've had all the papers and you've been able to see what it's all about this morning. I'm just warning you that we couldn't be moving around a little, but we are live video streaming as well. No public forum, and so we can move straight into the order of business, which is the Stoke Library remediation. So I'm going to ask Ms Barton to come to the table now because the question of potentially using Green Meadows Community Centre as a temporary pop-up has been put into the report, and we would like to have some questions answered on that, and Ms Barton has to go, so we need to have those questions up front. So I'll go to Councillor Fulton first because she sent me some questions on this very matter, so if you'd like to go ahead, Councillor Fulton.
Oh yes, thank you, Gail. My questions were around whether it's a resource consent conditions of in section 4.9 of the agenda, and whether cricket and rugby were consulted about the option of the library using that space.
We're just racing around a copy of that report to Ms Barton, since you can't see us. I don't think you can see us.
So, Councillor Fulton, in terms of a response to that, I don't know exactly the process of involvement of both cricket and rugby through the resource consent process, but clearly there was an issue that was raised about use, and I think the critical bit was, given that that's the peak hours that the Green Meadows would be open between 9 and 5, particularly on a Saturday, there was a concern that they would then be overspill car parking if there were additional functions that were operating out of the centre. So you've got large activities with lots of traffic being generated. You add a third thing on top of that, wedding, something else, I don't know what that might be, then there would clearly be an issue in terms of car parking.
Okay, thank you.
And your first question, Councillor Fulton, was, is it actually a condition, is it a condition, actually a resource consent condition of Green Meadows, or a condition of the lease?
Yeah, that's what wasn't clear, whether it's a resource consent process or a condition process.
It's a condition of the resource consent.
Sorry, we'll get Ms Barton to repeat her answer. Sorry,
it's a condition of the resource consent.
Right. So I guess the question begs to be asked, if it was deemed to be the library pop-up at Green Meadows, what is the process for making that happen, given that there is a limited number of people that can attend on a Saturday?
So it would be a matter of somebody making an application to vary that consent condition. It would be a matter of putting evidence forward as to why that wouldn't unduly add stress to the current car parking situation, and assessing those effects. And it would have to go through the process. I can't tell you what the outcome of that process would be, other than to say that car parking was clearly an issue that the Commission's turned their minds to, so it's a critical issue that would need to be considered as part of any variation.
And I guess the follow-up question is that length of time, minimum length of time to get some answer on that.
So somebody's going to have to prepare the consent application variation. That could take them a few weeks to do. They're probably going to need to get some evidence around that in terms of car parking demand currently and what it would likely be with the pop-up library. And then once they've started to have the conversation with the consents team, they'll get a clear signal early on as to whether it can be dealt with non-notified basis or it's going to have to be notified. If it's a notified consent, it could be up to 4 to 6 months to go right through that process.
Thank you. I'll go to Councillor Rutledge.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. The consent condition is not more than 50 people at one event at one time, not including rugby and cricket. Is that correct?
That's correct, that's the way that I read it. So you could argue, potentially, if the Stoke Pop-Up Library was not having more than 50 during that same period of people, and you'd have to provide evidence probably based on the current library operation.
So is that 50 cumulatively over that period, or is that 50 at one time?
It's not explicit. It says involving more than 50 persons or attendees, so I would actually read that that could be across that entire period of time, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. It doesn't say at any one time. It says involving more than 50 persons or attendees.
Okay, and so just in terms of effect then, surely there is a very material difference in effect between 50 people coming and going over an 8-hour period and 50 people during 1 hour.
Absolutely, so whoever's putting the consent application together can make that, the variation, can make that point and provide the evidence for it.
With the current consent, are we absolutely certain that the intention of that and the way that's going to be interpreted and enforced is that it's 50 people over an 8-hour period?
So I haven't looked at this other than this morning, so I've turned up and I've been given 2 minutes to have a look at it. If you want an interpretation on it, we can do that in terms of the actual condition. It's not clear. If it had been me looking at the consent condition, I would say involving more than 50 persons or attendees at any one time, if that was what is intended, but it doesn't actually say that. So we'd have to turn our minds as to whether that actually could be interpreted as meaning over that entire period or not. And on the reading of it, because it doesn't say at any one time, it could be interpreted as the former rather than the latter.
Madam Chair, for me that's an absolutely fundamental question to have answered to proceed.
And I think that someone can go away and do that in the near short term. Just a point, I have got you, Councillor, but you're not next. I have checked with library staff, and on a Saturday they have up to 200 people visiting the library on a Saturday. So I just think you need to put that into your little mix of thinking. On that one day, up to 200. And that's only for half the day. So it is a very well-used facility. I've got Councillor Courtney next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through to Officer Clare. Should we have been front-footing this? Should we have been anticipating the difficulties around the full and proper use of the Green Meadows Centre and initiated some sort of application to vary the consent ourselves?
So, through you, Madam Chair, in terms of the consent process, the commissioners have looked at the evidence and looked at the effects of it, and obviously on the basis of that have come up with this consent condition to manage those effects. If the council felt that that was going to unduly constrain the operation of the Green Meadows Centre, there would have been an opportunity potentially for looking at varying it at an earlier stage. But you'd also need to be mindful that in making an application to vary anything, you're going to have to demonstrate the effects of it. So if you were then saying we would open it up to potentially anything on a Saturday, I suspect that that's an entirely different story in terms of an effects assessment than saying we're looking at a library operation on these dates only.
A couple more quick questions. Who polices it now, this requirement?
So through you, Madam Chair, the consent conditions are enforced through Council's compliance team. So we look at those, and particularly if in this sort of situation, yes, it would be the compliance team that would be looking at it.
So if we provide more parking, would that alleviate the situation?
Through you, Madam Chair, it's a little bit difficult to tell. I don't know. I don't know the numbers. I don't know how that might stack up. And I don't think that there would be the room either, would probably be my initial response.
I didn't catch that last.
I don't think there's room on the site to actually provide more car parking. I think that was one of the issues when they granted the consent originally, was there was a constrained site with not very many car parks.
Thank you. Would you say, would it be fair to say that we've been caught with our own petard on this one? Because, quite frankly, we can't work this asset to the best of its ability.
I don't know that Ms Barton should have to answer that question, councillor, but
I saw her it's not.
no, she's not going to answer it. I think it was the nod. It's out of her area of comment. I'm going to go to Councillor Matheson, and then you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The car parking was the major issue when this was applied for. I think we may have half solved it. It was getting people access to the library. We now have put in place a refuge across to the library. That it wasn't even thought of when we applied for that consent. So that gives easier access to Strawbridge Square, people wanting to attend the library in safety. So I think we may have a solution or two if we look at it as it is now, if we're looking to change the condition.
I'm not sure what the question was, but I'll move on to Mayor Rees.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I do think it's, without having a full resource consent attached to this document, I do think it's, I'm not sure that it's appropriate really to be trying to interpret consent conditions from one consent condition in a report without having the context of the actual decision. And I'm just conscious that I don't believe that Ms Barton has got that with her. I think if you're going to ask those questions, you should adjourn and make sure that she has got the full consent with the decision and the explanation as to what sits around this, because I think if you had that, you'd understand the context. So I just want to know whether you want to.
And you weren't here at the beginning, but Ms Barton she's probably exceeded her time with us, which is why we've
Yes,
put her up first.
I do understand that, but Ms Barton isn't the only officer in this building that's incapable of interpreting a resource consent decision. There are several
I think we've tried to find somebody. I think probably what happened was because the recommendation wasn't to use Green Meadows, that wasn't probably explored as much as it possibly could have been.
Right, well, I've got a follow-up question, but I do think that having, and knowing that we have one submitter who was a performer submitted to the consent, who would be very knowledgeable about the matter, with Councillor Walker sitting at the table, but it would be inappropriate to ask him to then interpret the decision. I think that's not a fair call. But I do think we just need to be mindful of that, because what the Deputy Mayor is reminding us of is that there is a context around car parking here that was explored. There was also considerations around Bale Street and how Bale Street operates. But I think Councillor Courtney is quite right in asking those questions, because at this table they're good governance questions that we should be exploring. My governance question is in relation to numbers, and I'm not particularly interested in relation to this consent condition, the number that are there all day. So I've heard there is 200. What I'm interested in knowing is at any one time, what is the maximum number of people that would be in this current Stoke Library?
And the staff, I think, will be able to answer that at some point when we get them up here, so that will help us.
Then I also do have a second follow-up question which relates to the one that came from Councillor Fulton. I don't think that's been adequately answered. I don't think it's one that Ms Barton can answer. And that is, have the Stoke Rugby Club been engaged with for some conversations around the options for the temporary library or a pop-up library, and whether they would be prepared to accommodate the pop-up library at Green Meadows? So hopefully
And that's for the report writer, I guess. Thank you. I've got Councillor Laurie next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just wondering, I'm interested in that number 2 about how many people are in the building at once. But if we take that figure of 200 for a Saturday, how do we think 200 people will go in the former Stokes Seniors Hall? How's that going to work?
That's a question for the report writer as well. So we're just concentrating on the resource consent questions at the moment because Ms Barton has a limited time. So if there are any other resource consent questions.
I have one more question.
Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead. No, that's
okay. It was in my email, but I can't get my email up in front of me. It was around whether you would consider library use as an event or a gathering, because I think that consent is of particularly giving regard to weddings or a social event rather than a library which will have a steady flow of people. But I don't know if it would reach more than 50, and I wouldn't regard it as an event or a gathering. So my question is, does Ms Barton regard library use as an event or a gathering?
So through you, Madam Chair, I think what I'm asking for is some more time to have a look at this. I haven't looked at the details around it.
Right, so I need to ask you how much time you need.
I have to do what I have to do in terms of the thing I was supposed to do at 9 o'clock. And I'm back here at 10 o'clock because I understand it.
Yes, and the purpose of that meeting is to receive the recommendation from this committee. So that's the time constraint we have around that.
I can urgently see if somebody else is able to assist with digging out the material.
Thank you.
Okay,
In the meantime, we'll have the staff report come down and we'll have that discussion. Thank you, Ms Barton. There seems to be a warmth around the table to use the Stoke Community Centre as a pop-up library. I'd have to say right now that that's not my favoured choice because of a number of reasons, which we'll probably get into, but that is not the purpose of the building, why we built it. Also that we may have to then go back and move them out again. And I'm not in favour of that either. We have had another suggestion that we close it and not have an open library but have some services. So I'll get the staff to go over what they can give us if we just choose to close, open out the inside cladding and have a look at that. So, and the reaction from the public is what I'd be interested in. So the staff will be able to outline that. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
So have you got any alterations or corrections to the report?
In terms of the resolutions, we probably should add the year of the closure in terms for, just for future posterity.
And where are you looking at the moment?
Looking at so I'll take some advice from the governance advisors as to where exactly that needs to go, but I was advised as I came in that we should make reference to the year of the closure.
Hi.
So through the chair, in terms of the unbudgeted expenditure, I think it just needs to be clear that it's actually in the current financial year.
So you're allocating, you're stating when the allocation of the unbudgeted amount, right?
Yep.
Okay, so you're already clear on that? Okay. Right, that's in this financial year.
Correct.
Thank you. Right, do you want to outline, we've had a few conversations since the report was written, so maybe some thoughts on what you're thinking now.
Sure, so a couple of things I really want to emphasise, one of which is the current Stoke Library is a really busy place. You've got 10,000 visits per month, obviously not 10,000 people, lots of people go more than once. 400 odd people a day on a typical day go through the doors there. In terms of the current Saturday openings, I might ask Officer Harley just to talk a little bit more about what hours the current Stoke Library is open on a Saturday, because it's not open all day. So potentially, do you want to talk to that?
Yeah, so the Stoke Library is open from 10 till 1 on a Saturday, so, you know, after sport starts, and it is it is our busiest day as far as staffing numbers and use on the space over that time. I'm not sure how many would be using it at any one particular time, but you're looking 50, 60 would be the, you know, at its busiest point. Yeah, it's definitely a high use space.
The other point I really want to emphasise is the type of users that come to the library. They're often older people, they're people that are walking, they're people that don't have ready access to alternative options in terms of other libraries or going further afield and some of those sorts of issues. We've got a lot of young people, again, different, but again, similar issues around transport, mobility and access to those functions. The other point, which we haven't talked about a great deal, is the customer service function that the current Stoke Library performs. So that's crucially important. So the ability to pay rates, to buy bus tickets. There's, if the library's not available or some other facility's not available in Stoke to do that, there's nowhere else practically you would go. Yeah, that's...
I'm going to pick up Councillor Laurie's question before about if you've now that we've got the numbers, that you think they're 50 or 60 at any time, how could that be accommodated in the proposed, in your recommendation, which is the little building at the back of Stoke Memorial Hall?
We can address that through the way that we design what services we would deliver outside of Stoke Hall. We don't need to have as much of the collection devoted to, say, as much of the floor space devoted to the collection if we were anticipating that we'd need more space for people to actually be in the library.
So just adding to that as well, in peak periods, as far as the programming of services, we can also book and utilise some of the meeting rooms in the adjacent Stoke Memorial Hall.
Following up, Councillor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for that answer. If in the report it says that at the moment we're thinking that Stoke Library might be closed for 4 weeks, I'm just wondering through the Chair, if we are not able to offer library services in Stoke for 4 Saturdays, how big a downside is that really? If it is going to be for 4 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, that is 800 people or 800 people that miss out on a library service on that particular day. They might get, they may visit during the week, and they may not. But yeah, it is, like I say, it's our busiest day, so you'll be taking away, if we close on a Saturday, that's closing the busiest day of the library.
For 4 weeks. Yeah.
The other point I'd like to add is that it would be difficult to make that space available to any other users on a Saturday or any other time while the Stoke Library was using that large meeting room. So it wouldn't be available to rugby, cricket or anyone else while there was a library there.
Through the Chair, is it likely that other people would want to be using it over those 4 weeks, that room?
Through the Chair, my understanding is that there is some interest from the likes of the Stoke Rugby to use that space when they have their big days. And yes, they do have some interest in potentially utilising that space over the course of the season.
Okay, and one last question for me right now through the Chair. If we move the library temporarily for 4 weeks or longer to the back of the hall, do you think 800 people will want to go there over 4 weeks? And also, when you say 800 people, I suspect, looking at what I've seen at the library in town, that a lot of those people are the same people going back each week. So it may not be 800 individuals, it may be a number smaller than that who are inconvenienced.
So again, just reinforcing, there's 10,000 visits per month, 400 people per day that go through those doors at the current time. And for those people, the library is a crucial part of their day. For older people, they go there daily to read the paper. They go there for some social contact, for some warmth, to use the internet, to access services. It's a really important part of their day. For younger people, there's not that much for them in Stoke. The Stoke Library is a crucial part of where they go to meet with other people, to read, to access the internet. It's a really crucial part of that community, I think.
So through the Chair, and I appreciate that, and I'm a huge fan of our libraries, but the question I asked was, do you think that if we move the library for 4 weeks to the former Stoke Seniors Hall, that you're going to get those numbers of people wanting to go there on a Saturday?
I would expect that the number would decline, but it won't decline to zero. So if we don't open a library on a Saturday, we'll have 0 visitors on a Saturday. If we have a small library in Stoke Seniors Hall, we could have 100, 150 on a regular week.
Okay, thanks.
So I'd quite like to explore the 4 weeks is something else, but I'd like Mr. Petheram to give some comment about the minimum amount of time it need to be closed, because the suggestion has been raised that we close it for a short period, a couple of days, take that lining off and have a look and see, get the experts in there and have a look. So can we have some thinking about perhaps the smallest amount of time might be required for the closure, and then I'd like the staff to respond to that time frame.
Madam Chair, councillors, we have said previously that we would close the library for up to 4 weeks. That's quite on the high side, and we believe that the work could actually be completed within 3. However, once we move in, once we remove the linings, it will be, I think it will be reasonably apparent the extent of the damage, and we'd have more information. So I would say we would know within a week, probably much less than a week.
So I would suggest that, do we close, so I'll ask the question of the committee, should we, I mean, the staff have deemed we must close it to get the linings off, agreed, that's your decision. The decision is whether we can grant some governance, support and direction over what services are required for that time. Now, if we closed it for the 1 week, can we have a response from the staff about what you think the reaction, what can we provide for that short time frame?
So the first thing that we would do would be more gaming the library system so they don't have to use it for that week. So we'll be doing extended loans for people who borrow out of Stoke, so they don't have to come back to return an item. The other thing outside of that, for a 1 week closure, we likely only be able to provide an item drop-off, so people would be able to return their items to a library or to a box, and then that box would get picked up and brought in here to be dealt with. Any kind of lending services outside of that we wouldn't be able to provide, nor any internet or photocopying services, which are other high use.
So if we were up to a week, what do you know your clients, what do you think? Do you think they could manage for a week?
I think they could manage for a week, but like what Mark has said, we would be taking away quite a valuable service for high needs people if we did it for 1 week. For that 1 week.
Thank you. Councillor Rutledge.
Thank you. Just the numbers that are getting talked about, I'm just getting clear on them. So it's 10,000 people across a month. 4 Saturdays, that's 800 people. So it would be 8% drop in usage if we couldn't open on a Saturday. Is that correct?
Yeah, if that's the math thing.
Right. So 8%, pretty low given the massive interruption that's being faced here. How are counts actually done in the library? How do we know how many people come and go and how many people are in at any one time?
So the counts are done daily. So we only have a daily total. We don't have an hourly total unless we are in a particular stats week, which I don't have those data in front of me.
Okay. In terms of the Stokes Seniors Hall, the former Stokes, what is the fire occupancy limit for that building?
I'd have to get back to you on that one. We have that information at my fingertips.
Okay, because if that's the preferred option, and we're talking about how many people can you fit in there, that would be pretty material piece of information. And the last question for me is, you talked about the opportunity cost of using the Green Meadows Centre in that hall. Do we have actual forward bookings over the next month or two for that room?
So when I checked about a fortnight ago, there was one tentative booking in for a Saturday. During that period, it was penciled in, it wasn't confirmed at that point in time. I don't know who that booking was, who had made that booking. But I also want to point out that I don't believe it's been actively marketed as yet, but other people would need to talk about how that facility has been
Right, so as it stands today, the opportunity cost of using that space is effectively zero, and just a theoretical potential loss if someone rolled up and wanted to use it, organising a large event on a very, very short timescale. So basically opportunity cost is zero.
All I can say is
no, I'm
there's
happy-
one
I'm happy,
pencil
that's
booking
fine,
in
that's fine.
when I checked
Thank
a
you.
fortnight ago.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, can I make,
And last of all,
No, you
for me,
can't. You're on the list.
we talked about the services, the sort of council services that operate. Could those be quite easily just picked up and run out of the Green Meadows building, even if a library wasn't functioning? So a pop-up desk using our brand-new civic space that's warm and dry and highly connected, one would expect.
Yeah. So through the chair, we talk about that in the report as the option for a kiosk. So thinking in mind, that would be the little office that's next to the CAF. It quickly and easily, that might be a bit of an exaggeration. There's a whole lot of IT and technical parts around, but it would also need to be staffed. So, and that comes at a cost. It would have very limited library services. So in terms of the current offerings that people get from a library, not much, if anything. But there would be the ability to buy bus tickets and pay their rates and get a little bit of council information.
Sorry, Madam Chair, I thought I was done, but then the officer just brought up something that I have to ask a question about.
That again.
The staffing, surely you'd just use the existing library staff and chuck them across into fulfilling whatever those services are, would you not? Is it?
Yeah, I think that's that one. In theory, yes, there'd be an element of training involved, but yes.
Right, so there'd be no staff cost then, additional staff cost.
We'd have to look at any HR implications of that.
Okay, so I want to, because we've got to be putting something up to council in the next half an hour, I just want us to think about, so we know that they're closing. We think that some services are probably a benefit rather than nothing at all. So I just want us to be thinking about what we're going to be putting, whether we actually need to go up to council, because if we don't allocate unbudgeted expenditure, then we can deal with it ourselves. So if it's not going to cost a lot more money, if we're not going to be spending money we haven't got, but we can do things within the budget that we already have for the library, then this may not have to go to council. So I just want to hear some thoughts now, if you don't mind, about where you think we should be heading. I'll go to my list, and you are on the list, so just to be fair, Councillor Courtney is first. So if you could give me some thinking about what your thoughts are, Councillor.
Right, well, I think we do need a pop-up permit library, definitely, because I think we might be being a bit over-optimistic through you, Madam Chair, to Mark. Are we being a little bit optimistic with our 4-week time frame for a start? Because it's unforeseen, isn't it?
I think Mr Pezra might be able to answer that question. It's a building question, really.
Madam Chair, councillors, our consultants believe that the 4-week period is what they expect, and it's probably slightly on the generous side. However, until we open up the building, we can't say for sure.
So I think the question is, my fear is that we open up the building and there's not much wrong and we've spent $40,000. If we open up the building and it's a disaster, then they're going to have to come back to us anyway. But I'm sort of leaning towards a few days of closure with a minimal amount of, maybe you set up the room at Green Meadow, the office part, with some comfortable seating and a minimal amount of newspapers and a desk that people can buy their bus tickets, which is right outside the door anyway. So this is more the thinking, rather than $40,000 and we move everything out. Then we'll know what we're coming back. Now, if you're comfortable with that, then we can call another extraordinary meeting once the experts have been in and given us an assessment of, oh, it's not a problem at all, or it's going to be a major, or it's a write-off, because those are probably the choices. So that's the way I'm leaning. But Mr Pezram's got his hand up, so I'll let him speak.
Madam Chair, can I just make it clear that if we opened it up and it's as expected, then we would carry on and fix it?
So what's as expected?
That the extent of the work would be less than the $200,000 total that we'd originally put to council.
Right.
And that we would then complete the internal works within that period of time. We're saying maximum of 4 weeks. We would then be able to open the library, and then we'd do the work on the exterior.
Okay, so
if
Mr
we
Pezram,
open it up...
I want to know, if we give you a week, will we know definitively what we need to do, and then we can make the decision on whether we move where and when we move, and we might know more about the resource consent, we might know more about the fires numbers, we might know a lot more information.
Yes, that's our expectation. We would open it up and we would know within a week the extent of the damage.
Okay, well, I want to know if everybody's happy with that. I'm getting some positive nods that we close it temporarily, just open the linings, find out what we've got, and I'll call another meeting if you need me to. Madam Mayor.
Madam Chair, I think what we're hearing is this is a really important facility for Stoke, and there's a social need here that we need to make sure is met. I think your suggestion that there is some catering for the library customers at the Green Meadows Centre, that there's an opportunity to do that in a limited way. I think if we have a period of time that is 4 weeks to do all the work, then that actually to have the library gone for a month is quite a long time. I have some real concerns about, and I think you know my preference. My preference is that we find a way for this library to be in the warm, beautiful space of Green Meadows. I think that's actually what I would like for the elderly citizens of Stoke who use this library. And having looked at the resource consent, because I have amazing searching skills while I sit here, I can see that the numbers are only limited on that Saturday period. And what I'm hearing from, so in terms of that ability of there being a crossover, it's unlimited numbers for the rest of the time. So you've got to consider whether you might say, well, given the choices, would you go to Green Meadows and say, but actually on Saturdays, look, the numbers are going to be limited. So please, if you don't really need to be here on Saturday, then don't come on Saturday, or actually you have a library that isn't open on the Saturday, if you had to do that. I think you've got some real options there. But at this stage, I'm hearing some numbers. This is one of the times where I sit here and I write things down. And I've written down 200, 400, 800, 10,000 a month of people. Somehow we know there's 10,000, but we don't know how many there are sort of at given times. And I'm just not that confident about, to be perfectly honest, staff, in terms of the actual point in time numbers that will be in the library. I'd say 50 might be would be a really busy time. And I think that the community of Stoke, if we could give them the opportunity to actually have a library in that beautiful warm space, then I think they might be able to work with us on this. I would think that the Stoke Rugby Club also could, and by now, as long as everyone's doing what they should be in terms of the resource consent, the Stoke Rugby Club will have put through their entire season's bookings, so the staff will know, because they've got to do that before the start of the season, so they can log that in their register for the consent, and they'll know how many days of crossover there would be. I do know that Stoke Rugby have a right to use that, or desire and an arrangement with us to use that main room when they have their big club days for their after-match events, but I'm suspecting that the after-match events probably don't start till a bit after 1 p.m, but that's what the conversations that need to be had. And I think it's one of those situations where we all might have to compromise a bit, we might have to shift a little bit, but get on here and make the best of a situation. If you think if the staff can sort this out within a week as to what it's going to be, and do some pop-up provisions at the Green Meadows Centre, then I think you might have a way forward. You also have the opportunity to come to talk to Council on Thursday, so if we had to leave this until Thursday and you wanted to bring something through on Thursday, I'd take it at Council on Thursday.
That would be good. I'm not sure whether a library and... Oh, Councillor Fulton? I'll put you on the list. I'll put you on the list.
Okay, thank you.
If a pop-up appeared in the large space, you definitely have to go and talk to the existing tenants about their requirements before that happens, because I don't think you can share a library and an event in that space, so it's either going to be one or the other, I think. Yeah, okay. Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You put some drop sheets over the storage of the books. You work on a Sunday, and a small group can get in there, and within a Sunday you would know what you're faced with. And it seems so simple. Why are we making it complicated? No, there'll be people that will gladly work on a Sunday. You may have to pay a premium, but within hours you will know exactly what's wrong. So that's my little bit relating to that. And the other is The Video Easy Shop on page 9, it talks about not suitable due to building condition. Is this the appearance of it, or is it structurally doubtful?
Okay, through the chair, we went and had a look at that building. It has no toilets. It has no facilities in terms of a staff area or for anyone else in terms of water, cup of tea, anything like that. It's filthy as, it is really disgusting. And the amount of investment required to bring it up to speed, we felt ruled it out.
Okay, and then the other thing is, what about the ex-post office building? Has that been investigated?
Want to explain a little bit more? Is that where Kiwi Bank was or is?
Yeah. I understand that it has a lease still in place, but everything's negotiable. It's right next door. You could wheel the stuff in there. It's got all the facilities. I mean, people will be understanding if we explain to them what we're faced with. And there's no sense going for a gold-plated facility as a pop-up if we don't need it.
I agree with you, thank you.
Keep our feet on the ground,
Thank you for your practical input, councillor, as always. Mayor Rees, have you finished? I've got you still on the list, but you're all right. Councillor Laurie, and then Councillor Fulton, you can prepare.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not clear, just for a start, through the Chair, whether Councillor Walker's question was it answered about if you put the drop sheets down, you can actually get that work done? Is that right? Do you guys agree?
Yes, probably. We just need to be conservative in the figures that we give to you. We're saying a week, but if you did what Councillor Walker said, you would reduce that time considerably.
Okay, good to know. So speaking of numbers, the number that has come up quite a lot is 10,000 people a month. Now, I just need to point out, it's not 10,000 people. It is not 10,000 individuals. It's 10,000 visits. And I don't think we have any idea of what the actual number of individuals visiting is. And it's really important we know the difference between visits and individuals. So, Madam Chair, I do find this whole situation somewhat surreal. And I wonder if, I think the staff probably appreciate where we're at, but I know for me, we spent over $7 million on a community centre, a centre for the community in Stoke. And it was over a year and a half late being completed. And now we find ourselves in a situation where we need a space, and we have a space for the community, and the staff are giving us reasons why we can't use it. And I understand the reasons why, but it is one of those interesting, slightly surreal local government experiences that we're having.
Foresee the problems with the Stoke Library that we now are faced with, so we just have to deal with what we have. We're very short on time.
Let me just finish, if you don't mind, Madam Chair.
Have you got a question?
Well, my question really is, I think we need to all, I think it would be good for us all to consider just how many people are likely to go to the back of the Stoke Memorial Hall to go to a place that is a community hub, which is what libraries are. Compared to how many people will go across the road to our $7 million community centre. I think the two are completely different, and we need to think about that.
I take on board what you're saying, and I think what we're heading to today is we will need to receive this report because it's got information in it. We probably won't go any further than just receiving the report. And then the staff can go away and do what they need to do and come back to me if they need another meeting for us to make a decision once they know what's inside that building.
I've got a suggestion do you want to adjourn this meeting? And it depends whether the committee's prepared to come a little bit early, and with a view to resuming it at 8:30 on Thursday. And then if there was something that because I think there's a bit of work here for the staff just to go and think about, at least you're comfortable with the instruction is go and open it up and get in there and get the drop sheets down, and then come back and tell us if that's the staff are comfortable with that direction.
I think
you could do that.
I think that's a practical thing to do, because at the moment we don't know what we're doing with it.
But if you wanted to bring anything to council, then I'm happy if you wanted to leave that opportunity to resume your meeting at 8:30, and then if there was anything further you needed to refer through to council. So I mean,
I'll adjourn for the moment. Speak to the staff.
All right, thank you.
About practical things. Nothing.
Then you can resume after the council meeting at
Well,
Gail?
I'll just adjourn for a very short time to just
Thank
see
you.
how they feel. We'll
Councillor
let them
Fulton.
go and talk to each other. Councillor Fulton, did you have a comment or a question?
I just had a quick comment. I concur with the Mayor and Laura's recommendation as it sits as it's suggested Glen Meadow to the Stoke main line instead of Stoke Seniors Hall. I think that recommendation would be fine. Carry on. I can't see how the resource consent could stop the library being moved over here. I think that it's unlikely to be on 50 people on a Saturday, and even if it does, I'm not sure you would call it an event or a gathering. So I'm not sure that the resource consent conditions actually apply to the kind of use we have in mind for that hall. I haven't obviously heard back from Claire about that, but I would support it being moved to Green Meadows, particularly as it's an opportunity for young users and elder users to utilise that empty space, and often library users are non-sport users. So it's a great opportunity to share something beautiful with people who might not otherwise get to go into there.
Thank you, councillor. I'm just going to adjourn so the staff can talk to one another about the practicalities, because we're so short on time now. So I'll let them. I'll be back with you in a couple of minutes. Thank you. The staff have had time to go away and have a look. So, Mr. President Thomas?
So the suggestion is that the committee might wish to receive the report, will undertake some further investigations and then bring it back to you as need be.
Right. So I need somebody to move that.
Move in that direction.
Thank you, councillor. I've got one question to come and I'll second it. Number one, just number one, to receive the report. The staff are then going to go away and do what they need to do, and we'll call another meeting if we need to call a meeting once we know what we're dealing with. It may be fine. So I just don't want to be spending $40,000 if we don't need to, but we'll know more when we open it up. Councillor Barker has a question, and are there any finishing?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. In the interests of expediency, it goes through my mind that the common sense approach we are taking could be even speeded up if we said this coming Sunday, we're going to do the one-day closure, throw the things over the books and do the investigation next Sunday and have an extraordinary meetings as required next week. Make real progress.
If we had a perfect world, that would be wonderful, but the staff have to get the experts in and they'll have to liaise with them, but they've heard your suggestion, councillor, thank you. Mayor Rees.
Yeah, Madam Chair, look, I'm prepared to support that direction of travel. I will just say, having spent some time in the Stoke Library over the last couple of weeks, it is a very busy library. Fabulous staff, I have to say, out there at that library, very, very welcoming. But what I can tell you is, while I was there, every one of the customers who came in was asking about, when are you closing, what is happening? Because as soon as this came to a meeting or a briefing or wherever it came before, and there was a story around it in the newspaper, they saw that story and they're wanting to know. So it's really important to give good communication back out of today's meeting straight to the staff that are at the library so that they can give the reassurances. They're doing a fantastic job. Idea. And I would just highly recommend that if we get in there and you feel like you're going to need more than, a few days, and in fact, even if you are, go and create something pop up at the Green Meadows Centre. Get, people, Deputy Mayor was just letting me know that after the Anzac services, you opened that up for a cup of tea and people loved it. Yep. So get them over there. Everyone that's been in there is thoroughly enjoying it.
Yes, thank you. And I'm sure everybody will pitch in and do something. We're very short on time. We've got another meeting at 10. So,
I ask that my question be answered by the staff, please?
Mr. Petheram.
Madam Chair, councillors, we want to ensure that we do the work properly, and we're having to do it through a formal contract system through our maintenance contractor, NOMEC. If we just go in and open it up and we find that we know the extent of the work, we then can't repair it. We need to be in a situation where the contractor can continue with the repairs and get the work done as quickly as possible. Your system would give us the information quickly, but it would slow down the period of repair.
Thank you. Just before I put it, I just want to say that I agree with the Mayor regarding communicating, and we will be on our best behaviour as far as reporting to the public about what is happening. I find most people are very understanding. If we can do some, I'm sure the staff will go away and work out some things that can happen. If it's going to be a little longer, we'll be back to make a decision. If we don't have to spend 40,000, that's a good day for me. So I'd like to put that. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. I didn't actually ask, and I should have, I apologise, I should have asked if anybody had any interests, but I do trust you all to declare as you go, so just wanted to make that clear that I should have done that. And I'm now going to close the meeting. Thank you.